I am Brad Keelor. He is Gunalan. Find out on Director's Cut next what his fondest summer vacation memory is. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Director's Cut. My name is Brad Keelor. I'm the director of the Geo-Institute, and that is why we call this show Director's Cut. We are back from summer vacation. I hope you had a good one. I know I had a good one. We're going to find out some more about our guests, maybe this summer, maybe past summers, in just a moment. If you do not know anything about the Geo-Institute, it is time for you to get acquainted. We are a technical society for geotechnical engineers and geologists. We have about 12,000 members, and we are housed within the American Society of Civil Engineers. Joining us today for our first episode of the fall season, although it's really hot where I am, so hopefully it's cooled down a bit for you, is ASCE's past president, senior vice president at AECOM in Salt Lake City, Utah. It is Gunalan. Guna, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Brad. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and with all of you this morning.
We are going to have a good time today. As usual, we have 10 questions. There are 2 that are the same for every guest, and the first one is to describe your job in 45 seconds.
Well, as I said, my first love is geotechnical, but then I've become a program manager. So my job is managing large infrastructure programs and projects for AECOM around the country.
That was a lot less than 45 seconds. I think that's the quickest anybody's got, but you've had some time to hone that, I think. So we kick right into the fun questions now. And the first one we have to hit you with is disregarding all the environmental implications of this question, because you can't take any of these too seriously. What insect would you eliminate from the planet, and why?
Well, I'm not sure about eliminate, but the one that gives me the creepers is the centipede. I've been thinking about it for a long time. I was in the yard, mowing the yard and so on and so forth. And based on, my wife's apprehensions with a lot of things that crawls around the yard and the house, the centipede is the one that gives me the creepers. Not that it is bad, but it's just the way it feels and the way it moves and stuff gives me the creepers. So
one of those is toxic, right? Is it the centipede or the millipede that is toxic?
Yeah, one of them is probably. Fortunately,
did you ever have a horrible experience with either one of them?
Neither one. I stay away from them. So
it's always important to remember the line is what? They're just as afraid of you as you are of them, right? Which I don't really buy, because I know the biting is a defense mechanism, but I could do without.
And the thing that I always tell my wife is, this planet is being created for all creatures and all human beings too. So live and let live.
I'm sure she's really appreciative that you say that when she just wants you to kill the bug. So now we have some that will make you do some thinking. The first one is, you mentioned have spent so much time in project management now. You are working on a project and it gets way out of control. Who is the first person that you call? And it doesn't necessarily have to be an engineer.
Well, typically, in large programs, there are a few things that I always advise people. You need to have your communications person close to you. You need to have your project controls person even closer. And then you need to make sure that there are no surprises, and you need to keep, your bosses, you need to manage upward to make sure that nobody gets mad and upset and they're not surprised. So the first person that I go to and always will is my project controls person, because he's the one who's staying on top of the schedule. He's the one who's helping you stay on top of the budgets and all of those kinds of things. So that's the person that I would go to and lean on and make sure that, I don't get out of whack with my program or project. So
how much turmoil does that cause if that position turns over mid-project, and how do you deal with that?
it does. And so, it's always, even as a program and a project manager, the best advice that I've received from some mentors of mine has always been the first job when you get on a big program is for you to start planning for your succession. So you need to find somebody to take over for you. So same way, some of these critical jobs, I always make sure that there's always somebody there to step in just in case. I always use the term, what happens if the person wins the lottery, and picks up the phone and calls me and says, guess what? I'm not coming to work tomorrow. So because I won the lottery. So you always need to be prepared to do it. And the other question that when people ask is, would you like to be the first guy or the second guy? I always like to be the second guy, because when you come in behind somebody and take over a program or a project, if everything goes well, you can take all the credit. If something goes wrong, you can blame the guy before you. So, it's a win-win situation to come in behind somebody.
I think also with that, it depends on your level of risk averseness, adversity also. I mean, can you think of a time where you took over a project like that where someone else had made all the mistakes and you were able to cruise on through because of it? Or a time when you were the person that made all the mistakes and got to learn from them?
Yeah, I'm sure that there have been situations where people have said that, that I didn't leave everything pretty clean. I'm in the process right now of doing something, taking over from somebody. But, you always, look for to see. And one of the things that I always try to do is, okay, I want to see where the budget is. I want to see where we are, what the earned value is, and so on and so forth. So at least I know what I'm getting myself into, so that I know how to go about fixing these types of things. But it's when you don't know about it and then you're surprised. So I give you an example. Well, it's not a big program. It was one geotechnical investigation. I come in to Salt Lake, join a company, and become the engineering division lead. And I pick up the phone from a client from southern Utah, and the client is pissed. He says, you did the geotechnical investigation 6 months ago, and I haven't seen the damn report yet. And I wasn't there. So I walk into my engineer's office and I said, does anybody know anything about this project and what happened? And then the person says, oh, it got stuck at the bottom of the pile and I forgot about it. So it's been 6 months since we did the exploration and everything else. So I picked up all the pieces, sat down at the table, came up with my assessment, called the client, gave him a preliminary recommendations on the line, apologized profusely, and got the report done that day and hand carried it to the client and handed it over to him, and didn't, send my invoice immediately either. Took some time to send my invoice because I knew that wasn't the right thing. Same thing. I was in charge of material testing. So a client calls in upset saying, I have a concrete pour and I have nobody here. Your technician is not here to test the concrete and I need to have this batch of concrete tested. So I look around, there are no pickup trucks and everything else. So I said, okay, I'm going to do this myself. So take off my tie, take off my jacket, go down to the site. And when the client sees me coming in my Subaru station wagon with a wheelbarrow tied to the top of my car and with the slump cone and the air meters and other things in the back of my car to do the test and to make the cylinders, he just cracks up and he says, I don't know what the hell you do. Just go ahead and do it. I'm not going to be more upset with you anymore. So you just have to step in and do things. But yeah, it is,
So it sounds like you can do your own PR sometimes, because that's some good damage control right there.
You got to, because all it takes is one stupid thing, a misstep that way that would stick with the client for a long time.
Absolutely. That was excellent. Good anecdotes. So we know that you grew up in India And it was not the part of India that's 25,000 feet above sea level and cold a lot of the time. When was the first time in your life that you saw snow, and how did you react?
The final year of my undergraduate degree, we have what is called a fun excursion around the country to go see projects and learn about different parts of the country and different things. So on that trip, we took it was a train compartment that was hooked to different trains. We went to different parts of the country, but it was our home, away from home for 2-3 weeks. So we went up to the north, place called Chandigarh. I still have some pictures. So that was the first time that I touched and felt the snow. And so it was fun. So we had some snowball fights and a few other things. And it was kind of interesting, but it was not like the snow here in Utah, which is the greatest snow on earth. It was slushy and muddy and dirty and stuff like that, but we still had a good sense and a feeling. But the other story was 2002 Winter Games. I'm sitting at the stadium here for the Winter Olympic Games on opening day, 5 o'clock in the morning. We had all these plans about how to remove the snow from the bleachers and everything else. We couldn't use any chemicals because it would impact the ice ring at the bottom. So we had plans, shoots, how to remove snow from the stadium. 5 o'clock, it starts to snow like crazy. And I'm thinking to myself, I come from a climate of warmest. I'm sitting here for the 2002 Winter Games opening day at the stadium and shoveling snow. It's kind of ironic, but from that extreme to this extreme, it's been fun.
I have to say though, that those are two amazing experiences. What was the most memorable part of that undergrad trip for you? Because that sounds incredible, and it sounds like something we should do with students everywhere.
Yeah, it was fun. We went to different parts of the country. We got to taste different foods, experience different languages, see different projects. And this was one of our rendezvous with our buddies that we spent the last 5 years going through the undergraduate program, to spend, day and night and have some fun, have a few beers, and learn different things and get a little bit more before each of us went our different ways. So it was a fun experience all around. We got to meet some friends along the way, made some lifelong friends that I still stay in contact with in Malaysia and other places too.
I bet a trip like that, if you weren't friends with everybody, you're going to be at the end of that.
Yeah.
So we're going to question about your family a little bit here. Your daughter, I believe, is actually a biomedical engineer, but is also an improv comedian on the side. And I know she's done a workshop at the ASCE convention, I think, a couple of years ago for some of our members. What do you think that civil engineers can learn from improv comedy?
There's a lot. I mean, it's not a side gig for her now. That's her full time. She's also a writer for a podcast called Love It or Leave It. The ones that were speech writers for President Obama, they've got a podcast, and she's one of the writers for the podcast. And she's also doing stand-up too. The things that you learn is not in your day-to-day life. Yes, you get to, especially when you go to the public events, when the stakeholders are there asking you questions, how do you collect yourself and how do you respond to situations? Because the stakeholders are going to challenge you with your findings or your engineering and ask you for your advice and solutions. So need to be able to think on your feet. And more importantly, for a lot of geotechs, I hope it's not an issue. If you're questioned on a project that has any kind of a legal issues, I don't know how many of the folks have had the experience of being in a deposition. When you're in front of the attorneys, the opposing attorneys who are cross-examining you and questioning you and asking you different scenarios. What would you do? How would you have approached this? How would you address these types of things? Those are situations where you have to be careful, but you also need to be quick on your feet and be able to respond. So I think that's kind of what you learn from the improv type of stuff is given a scenario, that's one of the things that they always ask you. In fact, at one of the deposition, the person even asked me, which books did I learn my, engineering, geotechnical engineering from, which year, who was the publisher, what year was the book published? Those kinds of things you don't think about, but you need to be able to answer those things. So, that to me, I think it's kind of, an improv, right? You're given a situation and asked to comment and give an opinion because you know that they're trying to find a way where you're going to slip and they're going to nail you. So you need to make sure that you're very careful and deliberate and don't get yourself into trouble.
So I think the follow-up question here is a very hard-hitting, important one. Has your daughter convinced any of the rest of the family members to get up on stage and try this yet?
Not yet.
You were pretty quick with that, so I'm guessing you haven't even flirted with the idea.
No, but I've been told that, I guess, you have to have a sense of humor, and a lot of people say, well, based on your sense of humor, not surprising that she's doing it, but hopefully she'll pass that along too.
That's really good. So the second question we ask every single guest on this show is, how did you first get involved with ASCE and GI? And I guess the story has to close with why you're wearing that pin on your lapel right now, right?
Yep. I've shared this a number of times with folks. Way back when, after I finished my undergraduate degree, the option was to decide which direction I wanted to go. And at that time, the most popular field was to go into structural engineering. So, and I was looking around to see, but at that time, a lot of the things were being computerized and so on. I wanted to say, how do I position myself to stay in the profession and have a kind of a successful career? And the next best option at that time was soil mechanics and foundation engineering. So I decided to go with soil mechanics and foundation engineering, so for my master's degree. And the chairman of the department was a graduate from UC Davis. My advisor for my master's thesis, because you had 3 semesters, 45 credit hours of coursework, and then the last semester was a thesis option that you had to take. The advisor was a graduate of Purdue. So both of them, having come back from the US, had a way of teaching and so on, and they had subscribed to the geotechnical journals. So I used ASCE's geotechnical journal as a reference document to review, learn, and understand and do things. So that was my first exposure. Both of them were kind of members of ASCE, and they had subscribed to this and so on. So that was my exposure to ASCE. So then when I came to Texas Tech to pursue my PhD, my advisor was Kent Ray. So I walked up to him and said, what do I do to become a member of ASCE? So he handed me the form. He said, fill it out and give me $5 and I'll make you a member of the student chapter. So that's how I got engaged. The very first thing when I came to the US, I wanted to be associated with ASCE because I knew of brand ASCE, the caliber, and so on, and I wanted to follow in the footsteps of some of those people that I had come to know on paper. So that's kind of where the journey started. And then I stuck with it through the High Plains, and then Utah. I was a chair for the geotechnical group, and then the rest is history.
Fantastic. That's a good, and that can't underestimate the importance of having that $5 there. Huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you mentioned Texas Tech in there. You are a Red Raider alum. Yep. What one thing makes you proudest to be a Texas Tech alum?
The one thing that when I first came to Texas Tech, there was a number of reasons, because one of my advisors, Dr. Valaban, was visiting India, and he shared, the things about Texas Tech, and a couple of my seniors from College of Engineering Guindy had gone to Tech, and they had visited India, and I was a faculty there for a year getting myself prepared, and they shared all the things about Texas Tech. So I came to Texas Tech knowing that I would be able to financially support myself and be able to bring my wife at that time. The thing about Texas Tech is just the campus, the student friendly atmosphere, and the folks that were there who made you welcome, comfortable, and it's always value. We talk about membership values here, right? So the value of education. And at that time, the fee structure and stuff at Texas Tech was of such great value. I mean, you got a great education from some of the very reputed folks at fairly below nominal fee. I mean, I can be honest, when I told that to my kids, my daughter went to Caltech, my son went to Hopkins, and when I told them about Texas Tech and the value of education, they jokingly asked me, when did you go to school, Dad, during Ice Age or, Stone Age? Because as a graduate student through my PhD program, when I was enrolled there, I paid $65 a semester. It was not a credit hour. It was not any of that. It was $65 a semester. And then when I had to leave school because of my funding situation, find employment, and then I had to pay out of state, to be registered to finish up my PhD thesis, I had to pay $300 a semester. And I cried bloody murder at that time. And then when I look back now and what I paid for my daughter and my son, it just nothing, fades. So given where I am today, I'm eternally grateful for the education, the opportunity that I got for a very nominal price. And that's just invaluable in any term. So, in addition to that, the friendships and the support that I received there on campus was phenomenal.
They should be putting you in the recruitment materials. That's some serious ROI there.
Absolutely.
And I mean, about you crying about the increase. That's almost a 500% increase. That's
at that time.
That's amazing, though. 65 a semester. That's incredible. So that's got to be about $5 a credit hour, or probably a little more than that because you probably didn't have that many PhD.
No, it was three. It was three.
That's amazing.
Because it was 15 credit hours you had to take, times 3 was 45, plus there was some other incidental fees that you had to pay that added up to $65 a semester.
Crooks, that's like half of the tuition.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Wow.
So the value, Texas Tech is a great school.
So we've got 3 questions left, and 2 are more serious professional ones, and then we have a fun one to wrap up like we always do. The first one here, I want to be careful the way I ask it because I think a lot of people might interpret this as more of a, kind of a professional mentoring question. But what's a common technical misunderstanding you notice with young engineers recently, and it can be ones that you've seen within the company or outside, and what you guys do to address it?
I mean, this is a general one that I've shared a number of times is, if you go back even to Professor Peck and others, it's an observational type of a profession, right? So you need to, and one of the things that I had practiced and implemented was, when you come out of the school, you need to spend at least 6 months or so behind a drill rig as a geotechnical engineer. Need to understand the different equipments, what they're capable of, tools, sampling tools, drilling types, and so on and so forth, and what works, what doesn't work, what could go wrong, and how do you go about fixing it. I was in the middle of, jungle in Oklahoma, tried to rig up wash boring stuff to get some samples because we had some, tough situations and things like that. So that's something that I insist. And then I ask them to at least spend 6 months to a year in a lab, doing your Atterberg tests and doing other kinds of tests. So you get a sense for all that before you jump in and start doing the analysis and engineering and so on. Because you need to have a sense and a feel, even when you take a sample in your hand You need to be able to get it to feel and be able to classify it even without going through the tests and so on. I think what has happened now in today's environment, nobody wants to get their hand dirty, but as a geotechnical engineer, you've got to get your hands dirty. It doesn't matter who you are to be a successful geotechnical engineer. It's that, and then also everybody's in a hurry to get to a place, but being the profession that it is, it comes with years of experience and being able to do it, not just crunch numbers and be able to make your recommendation. That comes with time. But just like this improv stuff, there are situations where you have to be able to do things. We had a situation where we had, slope stability concerns and didn't know what exactly to do for a ramp getting onto a bridge. And it was, right adjacent to the right-of-way line. So the question was, how do you address that issue? So my recommendation at that time to the contractor was, we had a lot of piles that were being cut off because, we had excess lengths of piles. I said, these are all scrap metals that you're going to have to dispose of anyway. So why don't you take some of those and drive it along the right-of-way line? So this way you could drive the failure surface deeper into the ground and improve your factor of safety against any slope failure without having to do anything more significant. So that type of thinking and thought process comes with experience and being able to, address, specific situations in a more meaningful way. So the contractor was happy, the owner was happy, and they had the results to prove that it was not going to fail. And then you had some kind of a mitigation measure along the right-of-way line so that the property owner's property was protected too.
So how much of this, without really irritating any of our academic friends here, how much of this burden do you think falls back on the education system, where people need to realize that just because there's software to maybe add on to a field geology trip that you would have taken, that doesn't mean you don't take the trip. It means that you use these other resources to enhance that experience. I mean, where do you think the burden lies? Is it on everybody? Is it, the academic community? Is it on the students themselves? Is it on that first employer when the person enters the workforce?
I think it's a combination of all. Because the first employer is always looking for the graduate to become very productive pretty soon. And so this is why the summer internships and other kinds of opportunities are very important, so that they get to get a sense of what it is and how to go about doing these things. So it's a combination of organizations, ASCE, the education, the academics, and the consulting community, and the public sector as well, to work to make sure that we are keeping that pipeline, primed, so that, there is no gaps and so on and no changes. And the other thing too, I always say, right now there is a huge demand because of this stimulus that is going to be coming out.
Yeah.
And all the stuff. There is a capacity issue because it's no longer sexy to be out in the middle of the night jackhammering a bridge deck on a cold night when you can be sitting in the comfort of a room developing an app and you think you're going to become a billionaire overnight without even going up. So it's all a combination. So I say let's focus on not only the students in our accredited schools, let's look at folks in community colleges, let's look at all kinds, because it takes a village to build the infrastructure. So it takes all kinds of folks. So we need to think in terms of how do we go about building that workforce for the future to make sure that we are using the knowledges that we have built, the experiences, and also to look to the future to see how we can do this thing better and faster, because people are expecting you to have solutions today. I've had big programs where we had to go through 100 feet fills and 100-foot cuts, where all we had was one boring every mile. How do you even submit a proposal on that kind of a request? Those are all the things that are going to be coming up. Big projects, big programs, quick solutions, and how do we bring all that to bear to make sure that we are building a sustainable and resilient infrastructure that's going to serve us well for the future.
So I hadn't really thought about how these two questions would work together, but I guess they kind of do, because this next one is almost advice for a younger generation. This was the question that was most interesting to me when I wrote these down. You've spent most of your career in large companies. What piece of advice do you have for those people who might be intimidated to work in that environment? I think of myself. I worked for the British government for several years. I worked for a 15,000 person department. That was really overwhelming for a while. I had never had that experience. So what do you recommend for people to adapt to that, or to not be intimidated to even apply for that job in that large company?
The difference, I always tell people I came from small beginnings, but I've been fortunate to be in large companies in the recent years. The difference between the two is the opportunities. In a larger firm, you have the inertia to look and go after large projects and programs. That gives you opportunities to work in very complex and challenging projects globally, if not locally. The smaller companies, you get to do the mundane stuff, and you get to do a lot of different things, and you get your hands in different places, and you get to learn all kinds of things about the various aspects of the business and how do you do about it. When you get into a large company, the way I look at it is you have to be willing to ask for opportunities for being exposed, because otherwise what happens is you get pigeonholed doing the same thing over and over again. But it is left up to the individual. You have your annual reviews, you have your annual meetings with your manager. So you need to be able to sit down and think, what is the things that you like to learn? Where are your weaknesses? The person's strength is in the person's ability to understand not only the strengths, but more importantly, the weaknesses. So where are the gaps? How do you strengthen those gaps? So it is left to the individual, and definitely it is left to the manager. And this is also where a mentor comes into the picture to help you plan your future as well. So you need to seriously think, not just keep going to work every day, but start thinking about, what are you going to do? What do you want to be in 5 years, 3 years, and how are you going to program it? And then don't hesitate to ask for opportunities, and don't hesitate to take on more responsibility, whether it's in finance or whether it's in administration or whether it's in marketing. You need to put yourself out there so that you get, because people are not thinking about you. They're looking to how to get these things done. So that's the difference in a big company, is there you have to find a way how you want to swim upward. But in a smaller company, it automatically comes in because you're not very many people are there, so you're going to be engaged in it anyway. So that's the difference between a small organization or medium organization and a large organization.
That is some very good analysis, and hopefully it inspires somebody to do something, step out of their comfort zone that they wouldn't have done otherwise. So we are at the final question now, and we mentioned this one up at the top. Rapidly coming to the end of summer here, maybe not rapidly depending on where you are. What is your all-time favorite summer vacation memory?
The all-time, not to disparage anything of the recent years and stuff, but when you ask that question, think about it was going back to my childhood days with my father as the secretary to the government. The legislature used to meet every summer at a hill station called Uttakamand. And, it was much cooler, so the summertime was there. So father was busy and mother was busy with taking care of things. And I didn't know what to do. It was summertime. And being the son of the secretary and stuff, so I had a little bit of a stroke. So we had a lake, they had a path for horse riding. And then there was a boat that was specifically held for me every day. And I would be able to go to the lake, jump into the boat, row myself around the lake a few rounds, go park in some places and look around and stuff. And now thinking back, that's probably one of those very fun times where I didn't have my wife telling me that, I'm going to fall off and drown in the lake and I have to wear life jackets and do this. And I was able to go freely. We didn't have life jackets and everything else, but thinking about that, that's stupid. But go there, it was peaceful. I mean, we had these lotus flowers. There used to be certain areas where they had these flowers with great fragrances, and you can see people going horse riding around the lake, from where you are, and you get your exercise. Then you come back, have lunch, and then take a nap, and then go out in the evening and do something else. I think that those summers used to be real fun summers, free from any inhibitions or any baggage or any worries.
Did you realize how fun they were at the time, or is it a lot better now that you look back on it?
It is even more better now. I mean, I enjoyed it at that time. I used to love to see, look forward to the summer vacations to go up to the hills. It was much cooler, not very hot, stay there and do that stuff. But it's even more fonder now, thinking back about it.
That was great, and that is a fantastic way to wrap up the interview. You made it through all 10 questions, which everybody does, but I'm afraid someday it's not going to happen, and I'll have to stop saying that. If you liked what you saw today, click that subscribe button, click get notifications. You will know every single time we post something to the YouTube channel, which is frequently. This is part of our big fall return to Director's Cut. You can look for new episodes every single day this week. You will see more about it on our social media feeds, and probably anywhere you can stand, we will let you know, because we are that loud at GI. So Guna, thanks for being with us today. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was. Thank you, Brad, and thank you for all that you do to make it fun. It's just not all business. There's a lot more fun things at GI and at ASCE. So my best wishes to all, and hope you stay well, and we'll get through this fall successfully as well. I think the future is bright.
Thanks again, Guna, and we will see everybody tomorrow for the next episode.
So I can watch the dreams suspend night.